Fall Hydrangea Pruning Guide. Should you prune hydrangeas in the fall? Hello, dear friends of earthly delights. Welcome back to our little corner where soil meets soul and where your love for plants, indoors or out in the garden, finds guidance and inspiration. If you're here, I know a few things about you already. You're someone who can't walk past a nursery without peeking at the hydrangeas. You're the type who tends to house plants as if they were part of the family, who takes pride in shaping a backyard into a sanctuary, and who sometimes feels torn between what you've read online and what actually works in your own space. Today we're diving into a question that comes up every autumn. Should you prune your hydrangeas in the fall? It sounds simple, but the answer is layered with stories, mistakes, and wisdom gathered from gardeners just like you. Some of you may be beginners still learning to identify old wood versus new wood. Others may be seasoned caretakers, searching for new insights to refine your touch. Wherever you are in your journey, I promise you'll walk away with clarity and confidence for the season ahead. Before we dive deeper, do me a little favor. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing Earthly Delights community. Together, we will explore the beauty of gardening not just as a hobby, but as a way of life. Part 1, the Fall Pruning Dilemma, Why Timing Matters More Than You Think. Every fall, as the air turns crisp and the leaves scatter across the ground, countless gardeners find themselves standing in front of their hydrangeas, wondering the same thing. Is now the right moment to prune? It feels like such a simple question, and yet the answer isn't always straightforward. For many of you watching, whether you're nurturing a balcony full of potted plants, managing a busy backyard filled with perennials, or just trying to keep one stubborn hydrangea alive, you've probably asked yourself this very question. The truth is, hydrangeas don't follow the same rules as roses, lavender, or most shrubs you might be used to trimming back in fall. These beauties hold their secrets in the wood. Some bloom from last year's stems, what we call old wood. Others spring fresh from this season's growth, new wood, and some are clever hybrids, blooming on both. That means what you cut today might be tomorrow's lost blossoms. I've seen the heartbreak of gardeners who prune too quickly, only to find their shrub barren the following summer. But I've also seen the joy of those who wait, who learn the rhythm of their plants, and who are rewarded with abundant, breathtaking blooms. And that's why timing matters. It's not just about tidiness, it's about protecting the future beauty of your garden. As we move forward in this guide, I'll help you unlock those secrets, one type of hydrangea at a time, so you can approach your plants with confidence instead of hesitation. By the end, you'll not only know whether to prune in fall, but you'll also understand the deeper relationship between your hydrangeas and the seasons that shape them. Part 2, Old Wood versus New Wood, Unlocking the Secret Behind Your Blooms. Now that we've uncovered why fall pruning feels so uncertain, let's take a closer look at the real heart of the matter. The difference between old wood and new wood. This single detail is what separates a garden full of dazzling hydrangeas from one that leaves you disappointed come summer. Imagine this, your plant is not just a bush of stems and leaves, but a memory keeper. On some hydrangeas, the buds for next year's blooms are already tucked safely inside last season's stems. That's what we call old wood. Snip those stems in autumn, and you may be cutting away an entire year of blossom before they even have the chance to shine. On the other hand, some hydrangeas don't hold on to their past at all. They're like fresh storytellers, blooming only on new growth that emerges with the spring. These are the new wood bloomers, and they're far more forgiving. If you prune them in fall or spring, they'll still reward you with flowers because their story hasn't even started yet. And then there are the hybrids, the innovators. Plants that bloom on both old and new wood, giving gardeners a bit more flexibility and a lot more peace of mind. Understanding this difference is like learning the language of your hydrangea. Suddenly you're not guessing, you're listening. For those of you with busy lives, small spaces, or a love of both indoor plants and outdoor gardens, this knowledge is power. It saves you time, prevents disappointment, and helps you feel connected to the natural rhythm of your plants. And as we step into the next part of this journey, we'll start exploring each type of hydrangea in detail. beginning with the ones that are the easiest to understand and the most forgiving of all, panicle hydrangeas. Part 3, panicle hydrangeas, the reliable bloomers that forgive your mistakes. When it comes to hydrangeas, panicle varieties are often seen as the reliable friends in the garden, the ones that don't mind if you're not perfect, the ones that still show up and bloom no matter what. If you've ever noticed tall, cone-shaped clusters of white flowers that gradually blush into soft pinks as the season moves along, you've probably admired a panicle hydrangea. They're hardy, dependable, and perhaps the most forgiving of all the hydrangea family. What makes them so special is that they bloom on new wood. That means their buds haven't even begun forming in fall, so you don't need to worry about accidentally cutting away next year's display. Still, even though you can prune them in late fall after they've gone dormant, most experienced gardeners prefer to wait until spring. Why? Because those dried, papery blossoms that linger through winter bring a quiet beauty to the garden, especially when kissed by frost or capped with snow. They add structure to the winter landscape, a reminder that even in the sleeping season, the garden still has stories to tell. If you're someone who juggles houseplants inside with shrubs outside, or if your gardening time is limited, panicle hydrangeas are a gift. You can prune them lightly in spring for a neater look, or more heavily to encourage stronger, more compact growth. Either way, they respond with resilience. As we move forward, we'll meet another group that shares the same forgiving nature, smooth hydrangeas, often called the Annabelle types. Perfect companions for gardeners seeking both ease and elegance. Part 4, tree hydrangeas, graceful giants that need gentle hands. As we shift from panicle hydrangeas, let's pause to admire their close relatives, the tree hydrangeas. You've probably seen them standing like elegant sculptures in front yards, trained into small tree forms with sturdy trunks and billowing crowns of blooms. They're technically still paniculatas, but when grafted and shaped into a tree, they bring an entirely different presence to the garden. If panicles are your easygoing friends, tree hydrangeas are more like graceful giants, commanding attention, yet still surprisingly easy to care for. Because they bloom on new wood, the same principle applies. You don't have to panic about pruning in fall. The buds for next year's flowers aren't formed yet. However, most gardeners find it wiser to wait until early spring. Why? By leaving the flower heads through winter, you preserve that striking silhouette, those dry blossoms catching the low sunlight or holding on to delicate snowflakes. It's a quiet show, one that transforms a bare winter yard into something poetic. When it's time to prune, focus on shaping. These hydrangea trees respond well to light trimming that enhances their rounded canopy rather than harsh cuts. For many of you who balance houseplants indoors and ornamental shrubs outdoors, this is where you can truly experiment with design. Imagine pairing a potted fern by your doorway with a flowering hydrangea tree just beyond it, an intentional blend of indoor comfort and outdoor grandeur. And just as these trees bring structure to your landscape, our journey continues to another group with a different charm altogether. The smooth hydrangeas, beloved for their abundant snowball blossoms and forgiving nature. Hard as smooth hydrangeas, the generous bloomers that keep on giving, let's step into the world of smooth hydrangeas, the ones many of you may know by their famous variety, Annabelle. These plants have a softness to them, round, billowing clusters of white blooms that look almost like snowballs floating above their green leaves. They carry an old-fashioned charm, yet they're wonderfully easy to grow, making them a favorite for both beginners and seasoned gardeners. What sets smooth hydrangeas apart is their forgiving spirit. They bloom on new wood, which means every spring brings a fresh chance at beauty, no matter what happened the year before. If life kept you too busy to prune, or if you were unsure what to do last fall, you haven't lost next season's display. That resilience makes them ideal for those of you who juggle indoor plants on your windowsills and outdoor gardens in your backyards. Because these hydrangeas don't demand perfection, only care. Pruning them in spring offers flexibility. A hard prune cutting them back close to the ground often leads to fewer but much larger flower heads, dramatic show-stopping spheres. A lighter prune, on the other hand, gives you more blooms, slightly smaller but held on stronger stems that resist flopping after heavy rain. Think of it as choosing between bold drama and graceful abundance. This is where gardening becomes a dialogue with your plants. You experiment, you observe, and the hydrangea responds. It teaches you patience and rewards your curiosity. And as we move forward, we'll meet a type of hydrangea that doesn't just bloom beautifully, but also carries a striking personality in its leaves. The oakleaf hydrangea, a plant that brings seasonal drama to any garden space. Parts stick to oakleaf hydrangeas, the four-season performers. You rarely need to prune from the gentle snowball blooms of smooth hydrangeas. We now turn to a variety that commands attention in an entirely different way, the oakleaf hydrangea. Even if you've never grown one yourself, you would recognize it instantly by its bold leaves, shaped like those of an oak tree, giving it a distinctive personality among the hydrangea family. These plants are not just about flowers, they are about presence, offering something special in every season. In summer, their conical blooms bring a rustic elegance, often starting in creamy white before fading into pinkish tones. Come autumn, the foliage steals the spotlight, turning shades of deep burgundy, bronze, and fiery red that rival any maple tree. And even in winter, when other plants fade into the background, oakleaf hydrangeas stand tall with their textured bark peeling away in patterns that catch the eye, like nature's artwork carved into wood. Because they bloom on old wood, oakleaf hydrangeas need a gentler hand when it comes to pruning. Cutting in fall would mean removing the buds that are already tucked in, waiting to bloom the following year. The best time to prune, if you choose to at all, is right after the flowers fade in summer. But here's the beautiful truth. Most oakleaf hydrangeas don't need pruning at all. They thrive with minimal interference, which makes them a gift for those of you who prefer to let your gardens grow a little wild, or who balance your energy between caring for houseplants indoors and tending to outdoor landscapes. As you watch these leaves blaze into color each autumn, you realize that sometimes the wisest gardening choice is restraint. And that lesson will serve us well as we move into the most temperamental and perhaps the most talked about members of the hydrangea family, the bigleaf and lacecap varieties, the true divas of the garden. Part 7, bigleaf and lacecap hydrangeas, the divas of the garden that demand extra care. Now we arrive at the most dramatic members of the hydrangea family, the bigleafs and their delicate cousins, the lacecaps. If panicles are forgiving and oakleafs are bold, then these are the true divas. Their mophead blossoms with those full, showy globes, or their lacy, flat-top clusters, have a way of stealing the spotlight. Many of you watching may already have one of these in your garden, perhaps planted for their iconic beauty, or maybe inherited from a relative who cherished them for decades. But with their beauty comes complexity. Most bigleaf and lacecap hydrangeas bloom on old wood, which means by fall, the buds for next year's flowers are already formed and waiting. One wrong cut in autumn, and you could lose a whole season of blooms. Some newer reblooming varieties do flower on both old and new wood, offering a little safety net, but the majority are less forgiving. This is why many gardeners find themselves frustrated, pruning in fall, only to be met with silence in summer. The key here is patience. Instead of heavy pruning, these hydrangeas prefer light touch-ups, removing only dead or weak stems in spring after you can clearly see new growth pushing through. For those of you gardening in colder climates, where frost can damage buds, protection becomes essential. A layer of mulch at the base or even burlap covers over the shrub can mean the difference between bare branches and glorious blooms. Bigleaf and lacecap hydrangeas remind us that not every plant can be managed on our schedule. Some demand we listen closely, respect their timing, and embrace their quirks. And once you do, they reward you with breathtaking displays that make every ounce of care worthwhile. Next, we'll uncover a skill that helps no matter the variety you grow, learning how to tell dead wood from living stems before you prune. Part 8, spotting dead wood from living stems, a gardener's essential eye. After exploring the personalities of each hydrangea type, it's time to focus on a skill every gardener should master, telling the difference between dead wood and living stems. This might sound simple, but in practice, it's one of the most common sources of confusion, especially in spring, when bare branches leave you second-guessing. I've met so many gardeners, both new and experienced, who have cut away stems they thought were lifeless, only to realize later they had removed healthy wood filled with future blooms. Here's the truth. A living hydrangea stem often holds subtle signs of life even when it appears dormant. If you gently scratch the bark with your fingernail or a small knife, living stems reveal a green layer beneath. They may bend slightly without snapping, and as the weather warms, tiny buds begin to swell along their length. Dead wood, on the other hand, feels brittle, breaks easily, and often looks hollow or faded in color. Once you learn to recognize this difference, pruning becomes less about guessing and more about guiding your plant with confidence. This practice is especially important for bigleaf and lacecap hydrangeas, where removing the wrong stem could cost you a season of flowers. But it's also valuable for panicles, smooths, and oakleafs, because clearing out true dead wood each year allows the plant to direct its energy into fresh growth. Think of it as clearing away clutter so the beauty can shine through. For those of you who balance caring for indoor plants with outdoor shrubs, this lesson translates across the board. Sometimes it's not about doing more, but about recognizing what no longer serves the plant and gently letting it go. And with that understanding, we're ready to move into the next step of fall care, discovering what you can safely do now without risking next year's blooms. Part 9, Fall Care Without Heavy Pruning, Tucking Your Hydrangeas in for Winter. Now that you understand how to tell living stems from dead ones, let's talk about what you can do for your hydrangeas in the fall without risking next year's blooms. Because here's the secret. Fall doesn't have to be about pruning. It can be about preparation, a gentle way of tucking your plants into bed for the colder months ahead. Start by walking around your hydrangea and removing only what is clearly dead, diseased, or damaged. These cuts aren't about shaping the plant, they're about protecting it, preventing pests and disease from carrying over into spring. Next, look down at the base. Rake away fallen leaves and debris that could harbor fungus or insects. Think of it like tidying up a room before you close the door for the season. One of the most valuable gifts you can give your hydrangeas in fall is mulch. Spread a thick layer around the base, not directly touching the stems, but close enough to insulate the roots. This simple act creates a cozy blanket that shields them from harsh freezes and temperature swings. In colder climates, this step can make the difference between survival and setback. And don't overlook the beauty of leaving the faded blooms in place. Those papery heads, perched gracefully through winter, add texture and charm to your landscape. They also provide unexpected benefits, catching snow like little crowns, and even offering shelter to small birds. For those of you who love both indoor greenery and outdoor blooms, this kind of care mirrors what you do inside, cleaning leaves, checking pots, and making sure your plants rest well until the next season. Fall care is less about cutting back and more about kindness, ensuring your hydrangeas wake up in spring refreshed and ready to dazzle. And before we finish, there's one more lesson every gardener needs: the mistakes to avoid, the missteps that can cost you an entire year of flowers. Part 10, Pruning Mistakes to Avoid, How to Save Yourself from a Summer of Regret. As we near the end of our journey through fall hydrangea care, it's important to pause and shine a light on the pitfalls, the mistakes that so many gardeners, even the most devoted, find themselves making. Because nothing feels more disheartening than tending lovingly to a plant all year, only to watch summer arrive without a single bloom. One of the biggest missteps is cutting every stem down to the ground in fall. While it may seem like a tidy solution, this practice can strip away the very buds that would have opened into flowers next season. Another mistake is ignoring the type of hydrangea you own. Each variety tells its story differently, and pruning without listening to that story almost always leads to disappointment. Then there's the rush to over-prune. In the eagerness to make the garden neat before winter, some gardeners remove far more than necessary, forgetting that hydrangeas thrive with a little natural wildness. Add to that the often overlooked habit of using unclean tools. Dull or dirty pruners can spread disease from one stem to another, quietly undoing all your good intentions. These errors don't come from carelessness. They come from love, from wanting to do right by your plants. But love needs guidance, and that's exactly what this journey has been about. If you take only one thing from this, let it be this. Pruning is not about control, it's about respect for timing and type. And now, as we bring all of these lessons together, it's time to circle back to where we began, the fall dilemma, and discover the true answer to the question gardeners everywhere are asking. Should you prune hydrangeas in the fall, or is there a better way forward? The answer to fall pruning and the premise of next season. So here we are, back where we began, standing in the cool autumn air with pruners in hand and hydrangeas at our side. By now, you've discovered that the answer to the fall pruning question isn't one size fits all. It depends on whether your hydrangea blooms on old wood, new wood, or both. It depends on the climate where you live, and it depends on your own goals as a gardener. For some varieties, fall pruning is harmless. For others, it can mean losing an entire year of flowers. But more than anything, I hope you take away the idea that gardening isn't about strict rules. It's about relationships. It's about knowing your plants the way you know a close friend, their strengths, their quirks, and their rhythms. Hydrangeas, with all their beauty and complexity, teach us patience and reward us for listening carefully. Whether you're a busy plant lover who fills windowsills with greenery, a backyard dreamer tending a patch of blooms, or a gardener who finds peace in shaping the landscape, your hydrangeas will meet you where you are. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you grow panicles, oakleafs, smooth annabelles, or the ever-dramatic bigleaf hydrangeas? What's been your experience with pruning, successes, struggles, or surprises? Share your story in the comments below, because every gardener's journey adds to this circle of knowledge. And if you found today's guide helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our Earthly Delights community. Together, we'll continue exploring the beauty, the challenges, and the quiet joys of gardening, one season, one plant, one lesson at a time.